This is a description of a picture called The Widow's Pillow by Sergei, I could never say this guy's name, I apologize, Sergei Lobovikov. I will read the student description, the student's first draft description, keep that in mind, while the screen is blank, and we'll see how close the student got, what things were described that evoked the picture accurately, and where we can improve on the description. Okay, here it is. The photograph, printed with bromoleum and varnish, an example of pictorialism, is a vertical portrait in black and white. Let me make an aside. It's bromoleum and varnish. It's a bromoil print. Bromoil, B-R-O-M-O-I-L print. That's just what it's commonly called today. It's an oil printing process. Okay, back to the description. This photograph is composed in thirds plane, with the subject to the right divided by a horizontal line in the bottom background. We can see an old peasant woman almost on her back, showing only her left side, holding a bundle of straw and bringing her right hand to her mouth, mimicking reflection. Her face is not seen, only slightly appreciated her profile. Therefore, we do not know the expression on the face of the old woman, leaving it to the spectator's imagination. Despite the blurry image, the woman's raised hand makes clear that she has endured a life of manual labor. She clutches a bundle of straw gleaned, perhaps, from the field before her. As indicated by the intense gaze at the horizon, her thoughts seem to be on times long gone and faraway places. The photograph's background is blurred and darkened, but we can differentiate the country scenery where the old woman is. We can appreciate a horizon and a cloudy sky slightly dividing the earth. The texture of the photograph is very noisy because of the photographic device of the time or the way it was printed. The grayscale that composes it has low tones, giving the impression that it is darker than it really was that day. Another technical note, okay? The texture of the photograph is very noisy because of the photographic device of the time or the way it was. It's more likely it's the way that it was printed. This oil printing process adds that kind of grain. Back to your description. This piece denotes the components of pictorialism, turning the image into more than a mere reproduction of reality, referring to romanticism and nostalgia for lost paradises. Okay, now a couple things right away, but let's turn the picture on. Like I said, it's the printing process that gives that extra grain. It could be in the initial capture of the image in camera. It's grainy, but the bromoil printing process has this kind of look to it, has this kind of texture to it. And it would be improper to call this texture noisy. Technically correct, but noise indicates artifacts in the digital realm. It's like a signal frequency versus noise. In the older methods of photography, this would just be grain, because of the chemical process, there is a grain, a certain molecular size to the chemistry going on. So we wouldn't call this noisy. If it was a digital picture, we call it noisy. As an old a chemical picture, this is grainy, not noisy. So it's just key difference. If you say grainy, it indicates that it's older. If you say noisy, people think digital. In the description it says, we can see an old peasant woman almost on her back. That's just a language thing. She's not, by saying she's on her back, it means she's lying down, and she's not lying down. It'd be more accurate to say, we can see a peasant woman from the back, or we can see her back. She's not on her back, okay? Showing only her left side, holding a bundle of straw in her, holding a bundle of straw. It should be in her left hand and bringing her right hand to her mouth. Mimicking reflection. Mimicking, that's a judgment or a guess about story, so save that for later. We're just, a formal description is just a description of the forms, the shapes, the things we see, not what they mean yet, or not any kind of content or story. Just describe the forms you see. Don't describe any meaning or story. Only describe what can be seen as simply as possible. I'm just going through the description here. It's pretty, as short as the description is, it gives a pretty good idea. Okay, even though the description is pretty good, saying that we can see just the back of the woman. It's still a little confusing where she is. Okay, you can divide a picture in thirds. That's true, or in halves. She's really occupying the entire right half of the picture, less so like in thirds. You know, I mean, she's on that 1/3 line, but she's occupying the right half. And can we see all of her? She's cropped around her shins, right? So we have 3/4 of her. And even though we know we can only see her back and her left side, it would be good to describe which way she is facing, which way her head is facing. Okay, she's not turned back looking at us. This would be a great detail. There's some head covering. All right. Background is blurry. Where's the horizon line? That is a very important formal element. Okay, that divides the picture in space. Basic design thing. Imagine that this is abstracted design. Look how the space is divided. Okay, there's a moment in which the woman's raised hand makes clear that she has endured a life of manual labor. Okay, that's story, that's narrative, that's content, that's a judgment, a conclusion, an analysis, and that comes later. We're just describing what the hand looks like at this point. Okay, the next step will be, because the hand looks like XYZ, because the hand looks like the way you describe the hand, then you conclude the life of manual labor. Okay, so the first thing's a description, which is what you're doing right now, and the second part, which is the next step, the next assignment, is the conclusion based on that description. Could use some idea of tone, like light to dark, and texture. Is there different texture in this hay or grass? Different texture here, different texture here, different texture skin, clothing, things like that. So I think if you include those things, as well as everything else we just talked about, the description will grow quite well. And look, there's pattern in the clothing. And there's different pattern or lack of pattern in other parts of the clothing. Okay, so no pattern here, it's just a white shirt. There's pattern here in this skirt. There's no pattern in this. I don't know if that's part of the skirt or some kind of work covering. What is this? Is this a collar or jewelry? Notice if there's any jewelry or not.